Welcome everybody to tonight's INE Network broadcast. My name is Lew Jensen, and we've been having webinars within our circle for 7 years. And tonight's our beginning of a 5-part series that I teach every year on upscale marketing. Of all that I try to share in my own life, this is the period of time that I think most people ignore, don't pay near enough attention to it, and I really would like to have all of you gather this and see if you can't pull this into your lives. Sonia's on. Sonia, can you hit your microphone there? Your mic's open.
Okay.
Close it up for a minute while we do this part and get going. We've got a lot of new people said they were coming in tonight, probably over on my Google Plus account or over on YouTube that are watching, or we'll catch it later. And most of those people have not much idea about who Lew Jensen is. So I thought I'd start tonight with a quick little overview of kind of how my experience has gone. One of the things I challenge often is the fact that someone's teaching or preaching some things that they don't really know, or that they're not aware of enough. They've not had enough experience with it. And I've gone down a long road. And clear back, I hate to date myself, but clear back in the 70s, I came up with the idea. I was a general dentist, and I came up with the idea of building the dental drill straight like a pen instead of the right angle tool that dentists all use. One day I got the idea of building it straight like a pen and using it what we call a power pen. And no one in dentistry wanted to touch the idea. They thought it was a nutcase, and you want to build a dental drill that won't work in the mouth? What in the world is that? But the ideas just wouldn't leave me alone. And I kept nudging it forward and nudging it forward. It took me 8 years from the moment of the idea to the point of a product that could finally start penetrating the marketplace. And because no one else in the manufacturing side of dentistry would help me build the equipment, we went ahead and started building the equipment ourselves. And we were in a major banking meeting this morning with my sons, and it's so fun for me now to watch how far it's come in this period of time, from absolutely nothing and no market and trying to figure everything out as an entrepreneur. We've had well over 50 million in sales and 38 years of experience here now. And when I tried to develop a 7-step program to help other people to figure out how can I market myself and how can I market my work, and I began to discover there's some huge differences between what most people think about the marketplace as opposed to how I think the marketplace really is. And so we're going to start there tonight. I'll bring up my slideshow and we'll get started here and hurry and see if we can't maybe help your thinking a little. I've always felt like it's my job to stir things up, and I'm quite good at that. So we'll get started here and see what we can accomplish. All right. Someone's mic is open still. Oh, I know what that's Mel's mic.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. All right, Mel.
We have an organic article.
We're mixed in with our circle called the INE Network for Inspiration and Encouragement Network to help artists discover they have some talent, develop that talent, master that talent, and then above all learn how to share it. And that's been our focus for 30 years. And our success stories are as wide and as varied as there are people on the earth. It's been the delight of my life to watch people who started out not thinking they could maybe make something like this work, and then they begin to figure out how to open the doors and develop their name and their reputation and their products to the point they start to really succeed. And I'm so convinced that the ordinary miracle in life is what most people are looking for, but it's this doing part right here. They don't dare do things, or they don't know what to do. And if this is you, then I hope tonight what you'll do is sit down and take notepad and really, as I go through this slide series, I'm trying to jog your thinking. I'm trying to nudge you into a new direction, a new way beyond perhaps what you've thought in the past. And if you can get that part started, then realize that this hangs on the wall of my studio. It was hand lettered for me years ago when I first started. And what we dream today really is how things work out. Because without a dream, your day is just going to kind of float, and you'll just get up and target what comes to you that day. And you never, ever quite get ahead of your normal life and living. When we started putting the INE network together, there's quite a few of us that were involved in its foundation and its beginning. But it's my hope that the INE network becomes a dominant factor in the marketplace to help with the business of artistic and creative effort. There's just nothing out there quite like it. And Gary Price, one of their founding member sculptors, did our logo, and we've used that for a long time, and always try and thank Gary for his contribution of something this is called Synergy. And it's been a rather good piece for Gary over the years. Belief fuels enthusiasm, and enthusiasm explodes into passion. It's the fire of our souls that lifts our spirits. And I add one more thing here, and gets things done. Okay? It's so important that you dedicate this little discovery space to yourself. One place where your heart can go when you need to. You can sit down in that spot and think about how your technical skills are coming. You can practice and work there. It's a studio. I think a creative studio, a discovery studio is just a really significant thing in your life. Because as that space grows and has more appeal and impact to you, you're going to really be able to help your individual thinking. And it's so important to get out in front of your own reality. I talk constantly about the fact that human beings are really famous for not knowing what they don't know. If you don't know something exists, then it doesn't exist. But it can still mess with your career and mess with your success. I pride myself in being good at finding opportunity and taking advantage of opportunity. And you've got to realize that it is always the next exit. My new book is Opportunity Intersection, and when you find that intersection, you've got to move from the fast lane and take that exit to be able to get to a point where you can take advantage of individual opportunity. And as we began to share that effort, we began to share that watching, that observing, that functional effort of trying to find a way to help teach and encourage and motivate each other. Tony Pickering came into my class. I teach week-long seminars on how to do the power carving and engraving, and I've had over 3,000 students over the years. And Tony came to this class with these 3 students and was talking about his sculpting and what a passionate thing it was for him to develop his skills as a sculptor. But Tony Pickering died not very long after this particular picture was taken. And to have known Tony and watched him unfold as a human being and develop his skills and realize, oh my hell, I can do this stuff. And begin to realize what really represented. This is the famous home studio. There's Craig Holmes' famous owls. And here's some of Al Holmes' famous furniture. We have had such a rich beginning. The kinds of things that I think can help other people begin to figure out that your future needs to be incubated. How many of you are familiar? Have you ever seen the little chickens? It's this time of the year is when all the little chickens are being hatched. They put those eggs in and they control the circumstances carefully for a time to actually allow an egg to hatch. And if you can realize that that's the process you've got to cook your own circumstances. The challenge I've had in coaching and teaching other people all these years is most people, their individual lives are so different and so unique. It's just not easy for anyone to succeed at going at the marketplace. Only 3 people out of every 100 have an ongoing existing enterprise. That's a very narrow club. That's not a good number. I wish it were larger, but it just isn't. Only 3 out of every 100. And so if you're going to succeed here, the idea of what you're going to do with business concepts, you've got to learn about those concepts, and then you've got to develop those concepts, and you really do have to master this one. There's a really famous book out in the business marketplace of upscale customers, and when you start to realize how serious this particular effort is, most people know the word marketing, but they do not know how to use it, and they don't really understand the effectiveness of targeted marketing. This is different than general. This is really a targeted marketing kind of effort. The secret in life of success is to be ready when it shows up. You'll not see it ever presented any other way. It comes to you. It will cross your path. You're working, you're doing, the miracle's in the doing. You're working away, and then all of a sudden here's opportunity. And from that point on, the whole idea is to really, really target your efforts. Aim the rest of your life. In the beginning of my video book, I put the first slide up, says, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And if you ask yourself that pointedly right now, depending on your age, your attitude about how much time you have left is different for everybody as well. But if you've moved along in life, you've got not much more time to accomplish something that may be even more important than you thought. So if you're looking at your business efforts right now, it's easier to explain it this way. I've used this for years. Your business card is advertising. Who you give it to is marketing. And what it says on that business card is the branding. And so we're going to present the marketing effort that has made my own career work, and most of our masters have used these same tactics to pull success out of their pocket and pull it into their life. And if you can really look at if you don't capture that introduction, okay, you've wasted half your effort. When you bother to do this and you don't know enough to capture that and move it on into your life, then you miss the point of the trade. I had quite a day yesterday. I met with my #1 patron, Jacob, and we're trying to find a place for he has $40 million worth of art in his homes, and we're trying to find a place for that collection to land. And I got to meet Laura Ingram yesterday on the phone. And she's asked for Jack's help on a big project that she's trying to put together. And I watch people who, even though they've had a lot of success at one thing, they often don't know enough about the other things involved. And the trading mechanism that goes on between one person and another is a pretty delicate balance of whether you know how to play the game or whether you don't, okay? So as we move into this series today, I want you to first understand a rule. This is the first rule of the game of trading, okay? The trade wins. The rich are out there, and then there's the rest of us. And I don't care how much you don't like this concept. You need to realize this is how it is. This is how it's always been. It is spreading out across a few more people, but it really is so staggering that it's very hard for most of the average person, most of us, to realize how significant this difference really is, okay? If you spread out the economy, and all of you know, if you've been in my courses and my webinars for years, you know I like to split the economy in a hurry. You can spread it out very quickly among the 7 billion people. This top half have everything they need and want, most of what they want. The bottom half have very little of what they want and are struggling just to make the needs. But there's one little slice of this economy that most people don't pay a lot of attention to, and that's that top 10% of the whole. The 10% of our economy controls 70% of the nation's wealth. The top 10%. This is a never forget thing, guys. You've got to remember that unless you target this group, you will never penetrate it. You have to learn, how do I get to this kind of person? And you only need one of these people to light up the rest of your life. When I met Jack 34 years ago, and I did his first gun for him, I carved the gun for him and put Star of David on it, and he has opened the door of my life ever since. The second rule of the game is trading for your share, learning how to trade. It's okay to get better at trading things. That's all the economy is trading. Money happens to be the grease that greases the wheels, but it's still trading this for that. And it's all perception. So the whole idea, especially in the beginning of my pricing shows, my 2 pricing shows, I talked about not being a consumer anymore. You just can't come at the marketplace and the economy with the consumer's thinking. A producing kind of mentality is exactly the opposite. Today, 7 billion people traded their day away for something. And if you could kind of quickly measure your own effectiveness today, how did it go? I've had such fun days these last few months. I just can't get over how much has happened and how far things have gone. And so when I talk about this trading sequence, tonight we're going to talk about who. Next show we're going to talk about what, and then where and when, why and how. And see if I can't pull this into a reasonable perspective for you to realize that everything is traded for this and that. And I know there's a lot of ways to express it, and I've used alternative ways in my 30-year career, but I like fishing. I like fishing a lot to explain marketing, because to me it's exactly a good comparison. And as you learn to fish together, it's inspiring. When one of us does really well, isn't it fun last week when Jose came on and talked about how well he's done this last little while? This last year for him was just phenomenal. And never would he have dreamed he would have the kind of mix with the economy and then making the kind of money he's making now. And for an artistic talent to uncover that, it's just like you split the Red Sea. And so I think when we sit down and talk together, sometimes you don't get it, and then all of a sudden you put everything together and realize what's actually happening. Ron Snaberger's on tonight from Florida, and Ron's going to be on Dennis Little's show webinar on Friday. And I know for a fact, because we've talked about it, Ron never dreamed that he would be mixing in the same crowd or the same position that he is now. But it's because he's done the work. The miracle is showing up because of Ron's doing. And you can't fish unless you begin to work at it right here. The one experienced person out going after that great big fish is really so significant. And there's an art to it. You literally, if you're going to feed everybody and eat yourself, you've got to get good at your individual fishing. Where you fish will largely determine your efficiency. You should understand that fairly quickly. Where you fish will largely determine how it's going to turn out. Whenever I talk to anybody about their fishing capability, their marketing ability, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm working really hard at it, Lou. I'm throwing lots of hooks out." But somehow this kind of approach is really rather difficult to make it work. if I were to tell you I'm going to teach you how to fish, and we go out here on the driveway and we line up a hook and a line and we sit here and throw that hook out on this driveway forever, we can throw lots of hooks, but we're likely to never get it. One of the things that is now quite a tool in the fishing world is a fish finder. It helps you to begin to zero in on where those fish are, and then should you not fish there. So if you could find the bigger fish, what would you be looking for? And I know it makes sense to target your efforts. For most of us that are a little longer in years, we don't have time to go out and learn it all the hard way anymore. It really is important that you learn to just target every effort. I live, our cabin's near Flaming Gorge, and I've gone up there to fish my entire life. And Flaming Gorge is the world's premier fly fishing catch and release river. Tiger Woods comes there to fish all the time. My brother is crazy about fishing up at Flaming Gorge. And it's just an amazing place to go fish, and this is the scene you'll often see on the river. It is absolutely a spectacular reservoir. It's a dam, Flaming Gorge Dam, and then it's backed up this water for 90 miles. And this is the actual Flaming Gorge. This is what Thomas Moran painted so famously, was that sun hits this red dirt, and it just lights up on some afternoons like you cannot believe. And it's one of the hottest fly fishing streams in the world because there's so many really big fish below the dam. This is the dam here. And then when you see that there's 14,000 fish per mile in that river, you should begin to get the idea that I might could catch some fish here. But the problem is they get fished a lot. There's a lot of pressure on this lake, this river, to catch these fish. And so you have to realize that you can only keep one fish over 22 inches and two fish under 15 inches. So it really, it just gets all this tons of pressure. Now, you have to kind of notice that there's different kind of lures. When you're fishing, you have to have something that begins to attract the actual fish itself. And so a hook begins to be pretty significant in this whole deal. You know, this is where the place is, this is the equipment we're going to use, this is how the advice, what it's going to take to actually catch these big ones. And you literally have to start thinking in terms of that, of how can I take what it is I do and my name and reputation and get it in front of the big fish. We're not talking about lots of little fish here. We're talking about one or two really big ones. I do journals. I split chunks of wood and then round them out, and then I carve names and artwork and graphics on these personal journals for my wealthy clients. And when I can do something like this significant for them that's custom hand done, first of all, I enjoy doing it immensely, but my little power tool will drop this on a piece of solid wood in a heartbeat. It is just the most amazing thing to stick this little pattern on. That's the graphic, and then cut right through the graphic to be able to reproduce this on any surface. I've used this slide for years in my training because most people think this is okay in their life. They think that as long as I have the weakest link in my life somewhat fixed, then I can go ahead and try and make this work. But if you've done anything with a toe chain, you've got to know that wherever the weakest link is in your life, every human trait and characteristic, when you put the heat on this connection, it's going to break right there every time. And I've taught courses all over the United States, and When I gather our network together and I visit with them about what's the problems they're facing, the same two problems show up every time. I don't have enough money and I don't have enough time. And when I hear that same comment so often, and then I watch some people, it just doesn't matter what they're facing. Everyone has not enough time and not enough money. But there are some who figure out how to overcome those circumstances. And what you're going to figure it all out tonight, I think it comes just one little glimmer at a time. I really don't think this is an earth-shaking transition. You either figure it out and figure out what can I do to help pull this miracle into my own life. And then that suddenly becomes your own individual ordinary miracle, is to aim that effort wherever you are tonight as your as-is world. We're going to gradually move your life from there over to better. And as-is world to better is a business plan. It's how can I move my life from here, ordinary, to over here, extraordinary. And if you realize it's going to be one piece at a time and one step at a time, and it's a process of putting the puzzle together. How can I make this piece fit when I need it? And that's what I'm playing with right now. I have never had more going on in my life than right now in this period of my life. Years ago when I was starting, I ran into Tom Mangelson. And Tom Mangelson was a new young photographer in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I took my artwork and went up to Jackson in the park in the middle of Jackson Hole, and we happened to be right next to each other during that whole 2-day weekend. But neither one of us sold anything that weekend. And I got to tell you a little bit about that, but this is Tom's miracle moment. He shot this picture, and it's become his first strike into stardom. A lot of photographers out there, but very few that have done this way. And it literally lit up the rest of his life. We were doing this. This is the famous old elk rack. That's the entrance to that park in the center of Jackson Hole. And we were right next to each other. And he was selling his photography, and I was selling my sculpted eggshells. And we got to know each other pretty well on that 2-day weekend. And we never sold that thing. So at the end of the show, I gave him one of my pieces, and he gave me this piece of his. And then we took off. Now, I hear it often of I did a show or two and I didn't do very well, so I'm going to quit. And I think, what if we'd have quit? What if we would have both given up because that show was so poor? Absolutely nothing happened. You just can't quit. That is the final stroke. Whatever your dream begins to be, you're the cultivator, you're the curator, you're the incubator of your own dreams and your own future. And I've come down a long ways to get to this point. Too many people just throw mud on the wall and then hope that something sticks. They don't make enough consistent effort to get past this temporary way of going at everything. I'm constantly talking about a database that you manage. You'll have yourself a treasure trove of relationships as you build these business relationships. I'm just flabbergasted at how easy it is to build relationships with the internet, with Google+. It's just geared for that. Every tool is there, from the communities to how we mix with each other, and our ability to interact with each other is so awesome. It's unbelievable. But it doesn't change my perspective here that I've been building my own database for over 32 years now with the company. Went from Paragrave to Paragraphics, and now as Profitable Hobbies on the web. And when you go from inquiries to a customer, and then you take that customer to a repeat customer, ongoing business relationships, and then you throw in every time you cross paths with a power person, this is somebody you need to stay in touch with and keep them involved in your life. And by the time you cultivate this picture and perspective here, you end up with a database from hell. And that's literally the oil well in your life. Tammy now controls, owns Profitable Hobbies, and she has a database of relationships. Everyone here who's in the show tonight proper knows Tammy and knows that 800 number. We've had the exact same 800 number on now for 32 years. And when you realize that this is the real truth of your future, and no one has enough money and has enough time to get past that, you've got to find some way, some powerful person that can literally start to change things for you. Carla is Jack's wife, and she has a cool t-shirt. She says, "I know Jack." At dinner last night, she was so damn funny because she gets to wear that t-shirt all the time now. I want you to look for a second. We know it's out there. We just don't know how to penetrate it, and we don't know how to be involved with the upscale kind of customer. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Where is this home? Do you think this home is in the average neighborhood, or is it probably an exotic neighborhood? Where is it, a second home or a first home? No question, is there? How much are the taxes? The taxes on this place have got to be staggering. So is this home a need type home, or is this a want type home? And who do you think are the neighbors? Do you think this is the only status symbol these people own and control? These are some really, really interesting questions. This is not something most people ask themselves, but if you ask, you begin to see a pattern, okay? What type of work do you think they do? How much travel do you think they do? What charities do you think they support? And do you think they collect art? Okay? And do they spend more on their needs in life or more on their wants now? So you really can see a lot here if you just kind of know what you're talking about, what you're asking. This is the beginning of trading with an upscale customer. Because if you don't understand this, you're not got a clue what it's like to be involved with a really, really wealthy person. By any measure, the affluent sector is growing exponentially and is far more diverse in terms of ethnicity, education, location, and background than any time in the past. In 2004, there were 8.2 million households worth over $1 million. Think of that. Used to be, when I started teaching this course, it was 6.5. Now it's 8.2. And if you get up, I got to figure this out. I got to redo that number because this is quite a ways back. 10 years ago. What do you think it is now? It's got to be 10 million. The Forbes 400 list, oil was the source of 22% of the fortunes, manufacturing 15%, finance 9%, and technology 3%. By 2006, the oil had fallen to 5% and the manufacturing to 8%, but technology had risen to 12%, and finance to an extraordinary 25%. They showed us this morning, we had an overview session with our banking people and businesses that bank with this company, and they showed us slides of the effectiveness of Utah. Utah's average business transaction last year was 54 million. Average. We're 3 times Silicon Valley for the amount of venture capital rolling into Utah Valley now. And you have to sense that some really significant things are happening. And that means that's where money is going, okay? The average net worth in Forbes members 400 without a college degree was $6 billion. Those with a degree was a lousy $3 billion. 4 of the 5 richest Americans are college dropouts. So if you sit back, this, by the way, Sheldon is Jack Solomon's neighbor in Las Vegas. They were next door neighbors to each other. The dirty little secret for some of the world's wealthiest people is that they rarely act rich. Instead of over-the-top spending, they're busy figuring out how to save and invest and have that much more in the future. It's a habit you might want to consider in order to build up your own storehouse of cash. It's funny how we get caught up in the mystery of wealth, and we really don't see it well. We don't see it accurately because we've never played in that playground. You have to just back up and realize that when they get to a certain point, we're not talking just a little bit of wealth. We're talking extreme wealth. And there's 10 million people who are earning at least $1 million annually. There's 95,000, however, that are pulling in 30 million. So that top 3% is just the most amazing kind of number. When I started doing these series 7 years ago, Zuckerberg was only worth $1.5 billion. He's now worth $33 billion. Andrew's now worth $680 million. Chad is worth a lousy $345 million, and this kid, this kid is only worth $87 million. So you have to sense that it's there. I hope that you'll just understand between 2007, what happened in 2008. Awful lot of people lost an awful lot of money. But what's happened since 2008 now to now? Look at this. The rich didn't lose much. It's everyone else that lost a lot. And so you have to kind of say, well, it's out there. The upscale customer is the holy grail of marketing. They have all the money in the world to do anything they want, anything they want. And according to the Luxury Marketing Council, the wealthiest 10% of households have an average income of $300,000 a year, and a total of net worth totaling $3 million, and more than $1 million in average financial assets. That's a really big number, gang, and the odds are extremely high that there's somebody really close to you. One of the funniest phone calls, I never forget it. The guy called from Idaho, just got his kid. And he says, I'm just so struggling because I live out in the middle of potato flats here in Idaho, and there's nobody rich around me. There's no way this is going to work. And I said, well, it's interesting because per capita, Idaho has more millionaires than any state in America. So the big fish are actually as large in Idaho as they are anywhere else, in fact, more so. By all standards, the luxury market is the most robust, and while regular retail sales have increased between 4 and 6% annually, the luxury market has grown between 20 and 30% for the last decade. And if you can somehow realize that that means that's where you've got to go, and I try and watch those who have been able to do it. This guy has guided Chanel's success in the marketplace for a long time. And when he says stay connected, careful of the past, stay informed, eyes open, every period has a taste that it deserves. Don't be a judge of the times, and it is up to us to find a decent form of expression. Your own expression is your art. It's very dangerous to think that you know it all and nobody's wrong, nobody's right. We live in an unbelievable period where anything is possible. High quality becomes exclusive because of the price. So they take a quality product and then they just shove the prices as far up as they could possibly think to make it work. And I'd like you to write down luxury on something and stick it on your mirror in your bathroom and begin to realize that if I could trade with a more well-off segment of the economy, how's that going to work for you? And we'll say, oh, but I want to be fair, I want to trade with everyone, and I'm going to then starve. You just have to realize that the segment of the economy who can patronize you and your work have to be people that are beyond the point of things they need. And so this next series of my shows for this week and the next 4 weeks, I'm going to try and help you learn how to catch them. We got to get to them, and we've got to learn how to catch them. One of my greatest stories was helping Mike Blackburn. He got a chance to carve this box for this $1 million bottle of wine. The owner of Hormel Meat Company paid $1 million for one bottle of wine, and Mike happened to be right smack on the opportunity intersection. And his designer, he met this guy's designer, and he had asked her, find someone who can carve a treasure chest for my new bottle of wine. And poor Mike was so scared, so nervous. He wore bib overalls and a red flannel shirt and a big beard. He was just your traditional woodworker that just stood out like amazing. And he was so timid. I was just terrified that he wouldn't have enough courage to walk in and lay this all down. But boy, he did. We took it one step at a time and walked through it and helped him pull it off and pushed the price clear to $20,000 for a little hand-carved treasure chest. And since that time, he's done several more. And when you begin to realize what you could be playing with here and the potential in the high-end marketplace, the really upscale crowd, you begin to realize that maybe there is a significant way to go here. I've made just a checklist of the kind of things that I think is kind of where you should be and kind of things that you could maybe do. Ed, this is a particularly good one for you because we're going to do the same approach for what you're talking about. We're going to do these samples, and then we're going to make an approach to the samples and then keep it short and sweet and try and make a beginning trade with a whole new kind of customer. And it's predictable. It's how I do it every time. And everyone says, oh, Lou, you're so damn lucky. And I'm going, no, I know. I learned how to fish. Dentists don't know anything. I'm sorry. I should. I hope I'm not got dentists on tonight. Your market of needs, trading of needs is market driven. People have to have their teeth fixed. So all you got to have is location, location, location. Hangouts are silly shingle, and hopefully you get some patience and get going. But the want world is a little trickier. And you have to kind of begin to look at the annual calendar as to when might it be best to fish. Things that people want. Oh, excuse me. I got a little frog in my throat every now and again. It just gives me fits. When I did this show last year, sales for Christmas were $584 billion. 2014, they were $616 billion. Every major company brings their balance sheet from negative to positive right here. Every year. And the worst in the entire marketplace is the first weekend in August. Always tough sledding for business from January, February, and March. So if you're going to try and do your fishing, shouldn't you tend to fish with this calendar, not go against it? You really have to look at this pretty carefully and realize that there's a really important elements that will allow you to have access to the more well-off segment of the economy. All fundraising for large organizations happens from January through May. We're right here. And it is happening. And they give their money away early. They decide how much they're giving away. They give it away. And they got the whole rest of the year to say, I'm done. I've done my part. But when they're busy doing this, and you get involved with fundraising efforts, it's really amazing the kind of people you cross paths with. When I got a letter from BYU, the university here, and said they were going to raise $250 million in 5 years. Rex Lee, the president of the university, had given a bunch of them up there the charge to raise $250 million, and that was put in a trust fund. So it basically put the operating expense of the university on ice. And most universities now have done the same thing. They just don't succeed unless they do. But as this group went after it, we raised $412 million in 4 years. And I walked through the door and sat down with McLean and I says, "What do you give every donor?" I said, "Thank you." And he didn't quite understand what I was asking him. And I was on the phone with McLean yesterday. Very, very person that I started with this so many years ago. But that little effort became one of the most successful fundraising projects ever. It was featured in the National Case magazine, the Council for the Advancement and the Support of Education, the largest, most successful fundraising effort to its time. And when I got my letters of presentation and how happy they were to talk about the thank you gift for the Capital Campaign donors, we did a little Christmas ornament that was a gift from the university president to everybody who donated to the campaign that year. And it just ended up being such a phenomenal success for them and for me. I had $80,000 in sales in 4 years from that one project. And so when I talk about my background and experience here, and you begin to realize how important it is, even if you don't entirely know what you're doing to begin with, learn and get involved this year with somebody and help them raise money. It's just really, really wise to do that. Now, I was trying to help you learn to do it with organizations you're familiar with. I was council vice president over Boy Scouting for 5 years, and just before that time, the council actually went bankrupt. They got in really bad financial trouble. So a friend and I got involved and helped them raise some money, started pulling everything around, and I began to develop all those relationships. One of my first efforts was I carved a gun. I was learning to fly, and this club president came to me and asked me if I'd do a donation for a new search and rescue airplane. So I carved a gun, gave it to these 6 people, and they went out and started selling raffle tickets on my 4th gun. They sold 8,000 $1 tickets on my 4th gun and raised $8 grand toward buying a new airplane. Now, if you can kind of figure out some of these things that happen, I doubt you would bet that 6 people would change the course of your life, except it did. I'm very much a dentist, and all this was some other effort on my part to find some organization that needed money. Who would guess it would be the search and rescue part of our local area? You just can't realize how significant this little activity was for me. It literally opened up the door of potential and opportunity, and I began to see, my Lord, I didn't have to go out and sell these tickets. They went out and sold them for me. And yet I raised a ton of money for them. And so if you can kind of look and say, well, constantly remind yourself, what time of the year is it? What's going on with well-off people in this segment of the calendar year? And realize that it's often very similar for these same people. And so if you keep guessing, the odds are you'll have really indiscriminate and really inappropriate results. If you'll start to put a little thought into it and begin to realize, as you think things through and you begin to understand how significant this period of time right here is, when should you be preparing for sales here? You should be thinking about it and getting ready about it here. And lining up the biggest amount of actual productive effort is August through September and October. Now I ask in a show I had a couple of shows back, how many of you have ordered the Brownell catalog? Brownell's the big gunsmithing company in the Midwest. They have a free catalog of all the stuff they offer to sell. And when I suggest things like this to you and you don't follow through, I just drives me crazy, because it really is significant that you begin to find these kinds of tools and these kinds of things that will pull your artwork, your graphics, the kind of things that you're rendering. This is the very first grizzly bear I ever carved, first pattern on a gun stock ever. I put this on a patient. My brother had a patient that had done his own muzzleloader, and he'd screwed it up on the stock, and so I carved that bear right over it to cover it for him. If you don't have art of engraving, it's kind of challenging to find anymore, but if you don't have it, with all these graphics and designs and ideas, the text isn't so helpful because it's all hand scribing, but the graphics and the artwork in it will just turn your brain upside down. So if you don't have that book, then you need to get a hold of Tamara and make sure you have that one. You need to call Brownells and get their catalog coming. All I did was lean with a hint. I had a little idea. I'd had a little bit of success, and so I had a business card made up, took my samples, and I made a 4-day trip from Boise, Idaho, clear to Las Vegas. And I stopped at every sporting goods store along that corridor. And I went clear through that whole 4 days. I had a ball. It was fun to do. And I really didn't know what I was doing, but I was planting seeds. I was fishing. And about 6 weeks later, the company, the sporting goods store in Las Vegas called and said they just sold a $12,000 Weatherby to this guy, and he dinged it when he took it out to target practice the very first time he took it out. And they wanted to know if I could fix it somehow. And I had just been there. And so I said, sure, send it up and I'll figure out how to do it. Ron just posted, Ron or Mel, one of them posted a comment on Google Plus that said, what you do is say, yeah, sure, I'll do it, and then you figure out how to make it actually work. As I visited with this client, this new friend, I found out he was Jewish, and I got the idea of carving the Star of David right over the mark that was on the stock. And he says, oh my gosh, I'll have the only Star of David in the planet that'll have, or the only Weatherby that'll have the Star of David on it. And when he was really excited about it, it happened that I was going down to the SHOT Show, which is the largest gun show in the world. And so I told him I'll deliver it in about a month. Oh, I'd love to meet you. Now, I had dinner with this friend, this client, this patron, has been in my life. I had dinner last night with him. And I just cannot tell you the difference in the overall path of my life, because Jack has opened up every door of opportunity for me ever since. And so it's just worth it to you. I went into his home. When I drove up, it looked like a really ordinary home right next to Sheldon Adelson's house. But when I went through the front door, I could have died. He's got a swimming pool in his living room floor. And the first thing he did was take me into his gun collection room, and the ceiling was this hand-inlaid walnut marquetry from Italy. And I said, I hate to ask, but this ceiling is just boggling my brain. And I says, how much was this ceiling? And the ceiling in the gun room was $110,000, just for the ceiling. If you want to ever see Jack's home in Vegas, he doesn't live there anymore. He sold that place, but they used it for a movie with Jack Nicholson. It's called Mars Attack. So if you get into that movie ever and want to see my friend's old home, it was kind of fun. So finding this opportunity, it's often described because it comes along and it knocks on your door. It's an intersection of opportunity that you have to watch for. And if it came along and it was a part of your future, would you know enough to answer the door and be not afraid enough to avoid it? When you see those little tiny flickers of light, that's how a lighthouse works. It said, go this way, take your life this way, avoid that. Those little whispers that come along and tell you there's an opportunity here, that is the way to go. And from an amateur where you start to becoming an apprentice, where you're starting to learn a little more, then you gradually become a technician and eventually an artisan. You should start selling your work in this range here. A pro in my book is you're getting pretty close to full-time. Starting to consume all of your day, because that's now what you're doing. You'll very naturally at this point move into a trainer and a coach, and then eventually a master or master's of your subject. It's the most predictable pathway in the entire economy, because this is how it lasts. This is how it goes. And you can kind of look at your life right now and say, where are you tonight? At what point have you managed to push this and pull this dream into your life? This was given to me. It was a hand-lettered gift from Sarah Rain's husband in Texas. And Sarah's passed away now. Sarah was one of our first masters, and she started engraving for Ross Perot, and her life just changed dramatically. If one advances confidently in the direction of one's dreams and endeavors to live the life which one has imagined, one will meet with a success unexpected in uncommon hours. I just don't think there's anything more accurate. This is how it works. And you just have to be extremely confident in the direction you're going, and then make the effort to live the life that you've imagined. I'm so convinced that we're doing a masterpiece here. We're becoming a symphony together. It is so unusual to watch the activity going on Google Plus between all of us, because what we started out with didn't seem like it had all that potential and possibility, but it certainly has. So we've covered quite a bit of territory tonight. I apologize for my continued cough. I thought I had that nailed tonight, but still I'm struggling. I would like each of you to think about the fact that if you could find something that will light up the rest of your life this year, one heavy-hitting patron, and I've preached this and preached this and preached this, I'm going, unless you target the effort and go after that big fish, you're not going to ever catch it. And the odds of you crossing paths with somebody powerful, and that then spills over into your life, you never quite get that advantage in your life. And if you'll do that, if you'll make that effort, if you'll literally target that effort, I heard this story of the guy that wrote it's called Marketing to the Effluent. The author went out as a kid, a young boy, and was doing trick-or-treating. And he decided that he and his family, the little kids, would go over into the rich neighborhood and trick-or-treat instead of hitting the house to houses in their own neighborhood. And the first house he knocked on was James Mason's front door, the actor. And he didn't realize at first even who he was. And Mason was so startled that there was somebody knocking on his door trick-or-treating, because no one ever did. And he actually gave him money because he didn't have any candy. So he gave him all money. And the kid says he just threw a bunch of money in each of our bags. And he says it affected my thinking so dramatically because I discovered at age 8 there was a smarter way to trick-or-treat than almost everyone else did it. And you can't not read that story and not envision these little kids out playing in the neighborhood, and suddenly they begin to discover that. But think of it, he made it his whole life. That book is extremely successful. And he has spent his life learning to market to the upscale, affluent individuals. That 3% crowd, and it's now 10%, the 10% who own 70% of our nation's money. Think about it. 90% of us live on the remaining 1/3. And we do well. We get along just fine. It's just hard to even imagine. My major patron's monthly spending allowance to play on is $80,000 a month. And no bills. And whenever he suggests something, called me today and says, I need you to get a hold of so-and-so and so-and-so. I pulled 3 people into his life this last 3 days that are just kind of fun to play with. But it's a 30-year relationship I'm counting on and that I'm working with. And you just don't start there. There's no way that you can penetrate that crowd that way by accident. It's a cultivated, incubated, step-by-step process from one person to another. And I talked tonight about some short ways to interrupt that sequence. You begin to raise money for organizations around you that need to raise money. So I'd like you tonight to start thinking, who could I help raise money? We're already in it. From now to May is when most large-scale fundraisings are happening. My daughter Tamika is in Florida. She's knocking on the door of a couple that do one of the largest fundraisers in Florida. And I'm going, that's where you start. You help organizations raise money. And if you're not in a situation where you can deal with a large organization, do it for your church. Do it for your scouting group. Do it for 4-H. Do it. Find some entity, because the more well-off part of the economy are always involved with that same effort. And you'll begin to meet those people. And that will then begin to grow the relationships that might then open up the doors for you. So I hope you'll take what you've got tonight. I appreciate your participation in our presentation. We've overstepped our time limit here, and I promised I would keep this schedule tight tonight. So I appreciate you coming and participating. And as soon as we, tomorrow night, we sit down in our laboratory portion and we'll talk more about what I presented tonight. So let the ideas, let the questions cook a little bit, and then we'll go into our, what I think is the best part of what we do with our webinars now is visit with those who've done it and kind of get the ideas. Okay, how did you do it? What are you doing? Do not forget to sign up and participate with Ron and Dennis Little on his webinar this weekend. So if you are Friday, you need to realize that there's something very significant happening on Google Plus with the visibility and the exposure for all of us. You just can't do too much over there. You've got to learn how to make that tool work and pull that activity and action into your life, because this is the marketing tool of the future. Never have I seen a business tool like what I'm seeing, and much more successful for a business on Google Plus than I think even just Facebook. So thank you very much. We'll see all of you tomorrow night. And make yourself a little notebook and promise yourself you're going to do some of these things. Get Brownell's catalog. Get The Art of Engraving. Find a club or a group or an organization to raise money for. And then start watching for your own upscale relationships. We do the kind of work for the kind of people that thank yous for Jack. That's all I do for him. And he has a lot of them. And I just take care of his thank yous. And it has produced the substance, the core of my entire database.